Before there was time, gods or humans, there was the sea, and where the sea met the land, a mare was born, white and made of sea foam. Her name was Ioka. Where the land met the sea, a tree grew, a strong, sturdy oak. On the oak grew a plant whose berries Ioka ate, and they were transformed within her, and she gave birth to a god, Kronos. The childbirth was so painful that she ripped bark from the oak and threw it into the sea, and the bark was transformed by the sea and became the giants of the deep sea. Ioka and Cernunnos had 4 children, the gods Meponos, Tyrannus, Teutates, and the goddess Epona. Ioka became tired of the land and returned to the sea. She changed into Tethra, goddess of the deep water. The gods and goddess were lonely because they had no one to command or to worship them. They took wood from the oak tree and created the first man and woman. Cernunnos also made animals from the oak tree. The gods and goddess also made things from the tree. Epona made the horse in memory of Ioka. Teutates made a bow, arrows, and a club. Tyrannus made thunderbolts, and Meponos made a harp. The giants of the deep became envious of the gods and goddess because they saw how happy they were, so they plotted to have the sea flood them and the land. But Tethra overheard the plot and warned her sons and daughters. When the giants came against them, the gods took refuge in the oak tree. Tyrannus threw his thunderbolt. Meponos broke the sky and threw it at the giants. Teutates killed many of the giants with his bow and arrows. The giants of the deep had the strength of the waves. The gods overwhelmed the giants, but could not destroy them. The giants retreated to the sea. Epona had rescued 1 man and 1 woman from the destruction. From this man and woman would come our mighty people. The gods and the goddess returned to the oak tree, which still stood strong and sturdy.
Once upon a time, when there was no time, no gods or humans walked the surface of the land. But there was the sea, and where the sea met the land, a mare was born, white and made of sea foam, and her name was Ioka. Not far from where the land met the sea, a tree grew, a strong and sturdy oak. On the oak grew a plant whose seeds were formed from the foam tears of the sea. To sustain her, Ioka ate the seeds, these white berries, and they were transformed within her. Ioka grew heavy with child and gave birth to the god Cernunnos. So great was her pain in childbirth that she ripped bark from the one tree and hurled it into the sea. The bark was transformed by the sea and became the giants of the deep. Cernunnos was lonely and he saw the giants of the deep, who were numerous. So he coupled with Ioka, and of their union came the gods Meponos, Tyrannus, and Teutates, and the goddess Epona. Ioka soon tired of the land, being a creature of sea foam, and she returned to the sea, where she was transformed into Tethra, goddess of the deep water. also known as Tithys. The gods and goddess were lonely, for they had no one to command or worship them. They took wood from the oak tree and fashioned the first man and the first woman. Cernunnos also made other animals from the oak tree: the deer and the hound, the boar and the raven, the hare and the snake. He was god of the animals, and he commanded the oak tree to spread and grow into vast forests to serve as a home for his children. Epona also made animals, but she made only the horse, mare and stallion alike, in remembrance of Ioka, who was no more. Teutates took limbs from the one tree and fashioned a bow, arrows, and a club. Tyrannus took limbs from the one tree and fashioned thunderbolts, made of fire and noise. He would leap to the top of the tallest trees and hurl his weapon at the ground. The ground would shake, the grass would burn, and the animals would run in fear. Maponos also took limbs from the tree, but he fashioned not a weapon, but a harp. He stretched strings of wind from its limbs and spent his days in Cernunnos' forest. The winds and the birds would join in the melodies, and all Cernunnos animals would come from near and far to hear Maponos play. The giants of the deep saw the gods and goddess happy on the land, and the giants were very envious, for they had nothing to command, nothing to worship them. So the giants plotted against the gods. They would overwhelm them with the sea and take the land under the water. But Tethra in the deep sea heard the murmuring of the giants in the waves, and she remembered her days as Ioka, and so she warned her sons and daughter. The gods were prepared the day the giants came against them. The gods took refuge in the oak tree. Tyrannus hurled his thunderbolt and split the land, and the sea overflowed its boundaries. Maponos broke the sky and hurled it at the giants. Teutates' deadly aim with the bow and arrows from the one oak tree cut down many of the giants. The giants of the deep were not without weapons. They had the strength of the waves. The gods overwhelmed the giants, but could not destroy them. The giants of the deep were driven back into the sea, and Tethra bound them in the deep waters. But a few escaped Tethra and fled far from her reach. They called themselves the Fomor, and built a life on the outer edges of the world. But the Fomor dreamed of conquest, and vowed to once again take the land from the gods. Of their later battles our histories tell us much. The sea returned to its bed, and Maponos repaired the sky. The gods then searched for Epona, who had been absent from the victory. Epona had rescued one man and one woman from the watery and fiery destruction, and the three of them waded deep in Cernunnos' forest. From this man and this woman Epona saved would come our mighty people. The gods and the goddess left the deep of Cernunnos' forest and returned to their home near the one tree of oak, which still stood strong and sturdy, and the sacred berries were still white as sea foam.